I've been waiting years to see Fractal do something that's not the Defined series, and I suspect a lot of you guys feel the same way too, and here's the answer to that. It's called the Fractal Torrent. It's a brand new chassis with a brand new layout. It is something fresh, or from Fractal at least. Let's see what makes this thing flow, and then we're gonna do a build, and we're gonna do the thermals, we're gonna do all that stuff, so stick around. All right, let's start off with panel removal. Front panel is really easy to remove. You just pull it and it pops off. There's a built-in filter, which I'm gonna cover in a bit as well, that's in the front panel that is removable and cleanable. But yeah, we'll come back to filters in a minute. Side panel removal is really easy as well. It's very straightforward. You just pull this tab in the corner and the glass panel just pops off and lifts out and it gets out of the way. The rear panel is the same thing in the corner, little tab, pull it, lift it, and away you go. So that's exactly what the tab looks like when you want to pull it to lift off the panel. Top panel removal is done with these two screws in the corner. I've already loosened them off, but basically you just pull it back and you can lift the top panel off. Now, you'll see why the top panel needs to be removable in a second, but it's plastic and not metal. And it's got that front panel dust filter, which I've already showed, and there's also a bottom filter here, which can be slid out. So it's on a little rail system and it just pops in, Bob's your uncle. This version of the case has 5 included fans. There's 2 180mm fans up the front. They're not 200mm, they're 180mm. And there's 3 140mm in the basement as well for intake. These front fans can be removed, and there is an included bracket that comes with it to convert it to, let's say you want to do 420mm rad at the front, you can do that, or like a 360mm rad. This can also be changed too. You can remove these, you can put 3 120s, 3 140s, a 420mm rad, a 360mm rad if you're doing custom water cooling at the bottom as well. So there's a lot of cooling options. There's no cooling at the top whatsoever. It's only from the front and the bottom with exhaust out the rear. Other than those fan mounts, there's an additional 120 or 140mm fan mount at the rear. You can see there's mounting holes here and here. So 140 for these ones and 120 for the inner ones. And there's no fan mounting at the top. That is for intake for the power supply. The power supply mounts from the top when the top panel has been removed from the case. I wouldn't go more than a 200mm size power supply, maybe a 230. The reason why I say that is you'll notice there's this angular piece of metal here, which basically stops the maximum length of your power supply here. There's also some cable management stuff, which we're gonna come to as well. There's Velcro tie downs all over this case that's pre-installed. So for cable management, I feel like it might be quite easy in this case. As like most Fractal cases, they have integrated fill ports. There's 3 sizes here. Well, actually there's 2 sizes and 3 locations. So do what you want with these fill ports. This is very handy for custom water cooling. For front panel, or rather top panel I/O, you've got a headphone jack, a microphone jack, USB type A 3.0, a combined power and LED button. There's also another USB type A port, USB type C, and a reset button. For motherboard support, so this is a regular ATX size board, and it should just sit there nicely, try not to drop it. You can do ITX all the way up to SSI EEB. There is mounting points much further along here. The only issue with this being that you will block out the cable management grommets here. You'll most likely need to remove these grommets to fit in a much larger board. But for EATX, you should actually be able to hang it over and it should be no problem. So for CEB, you'd be using the mounts a little bit further up. EEB, you'd be using the mounts all the way up here. So quite extensive motherboard support. This is something new for Fractal in a case this size. And while I'm talking about motherboards, I'll just note that for CPU air cooler height, you're looking at 188mm of maximum height. And for GPU support, here is a 6800 XT reference. Yeah, you've got a lot of GPU support in here. It actually looks kind of tiny. The maximum length you're looking at is 423mm if you've got a radiator installed at the front. Otherwise, just minus the width of the fans. The PCIe slot covers are obviously removable, but there's no bars between each of them for support. So you can put any vertical GPU bracket in here if you want to vertically mount your GPU. Now this might be good if you're wanting to water cool it. Air cooling is good too because it's actually not sitting up against the glass. This case is quite wide from what you can already see, but yeah, this does give you that option as well. In terms of SSD and hard disk support, you've got 2 mounts for 3.5-inch spinning rush drives here, and you've got 4 2.5-inch SSD mounts along the side, so quite extensive storage options. There's a 9-port PWM fan hub that's integrated into the case. It's called the Fractal Nexus, and it will receive a PWM fan signal to control all of these, and also needs additional SATA or SATA power through this additional SATA power cable. Cable management seems to be handled quite well with these included Velcro tie downs. So there's quite a few here. There's 3 on this side here. There's 1 for cable managing here. This to route the power cables out of the power supply itself. There's also additional ones that run down the back side here, and this is all included. I didn't install any of this stuff. Front panel wiring is all your standard stuff. You've got your USB Type-C front panel, you've got your front panel audio, USB 3.0 front panel connector. You've also got your standard lights and switches and all that jazz to let you know your system's up and running, and a 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB connector that plugs into your addressable RGB header on your motherboard for the built-in RGB strip that's in the top of the case near the power supply. There's also an integrated RGB strip here on the bottom of the power supply shroud too. Also wanted to mention that the bottom fan bracket is removable. There's 2 screws that hold it in. So if you're installing a radiator or you're wanting to change the fans out that come with this case, you just need to loosen up these 2 screws here. So just like that, right? And you can pull out this entire fan bracket. If you're changing it to install a radiator on the bottom for custom water cooling, it's nice and easy. We'll be changing all of these fans. As mentioned a little bit earlier in the video, these 180mm fans can be removed, and you can actually change the entire bracket on the inside to allow for 3 140s or 3 120s. Comes in this big old box with the 2 brackets to change it out. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually gonna change this out because I'm gonna be changing the fans on the front because we're using a 360mm rad up the front. Essentially the way this works is you remove a bunch of screws on the front, you put these in, and you change the offset of them to allow for either 140 or 120mm fans. I'm gonna show you this right now. You'll notice that there's these little notches here, and this allows you to align it for either 120, 140. Obviously, the one out is for 140mm fans, and if you pop it to the inside notch, that is for 120mm fan. A few other things to mention as well. There's pump res combo mounting here along this edge. This is what these slits are for. So you can use them to, mount your pump res combos if you're doing custom water cooling. We're not going to be custom water cooling in this today, but I do have a plan for a custom water cool build in this case because there's lots of room for activities. It's got a box of accessories, all the standard stuff that you get with the case, your screws, some extra Velcro straps and all that stuff. However, there's an included GPU support bracket which can be connected to the motherboard tray on the case itself, so you can have your GPU support bracket and not worry about it, because some of these cases where the fans mount on the bottom, it can be quite tricky to have some GPU support. So there you go, included GPU support bracket. That's basically everything you need to know about the Fractal Torrent. Now, I just got to mention this as well. We're not using the included fans in the case because I want to front mount a rad, and with those 180mm fans, I just can't do it at the front. So instead of me leaving the bottom fans in and showing you thermals with that, I'm going to show you what the thermals are like if you decide to replace every single fan in the case. So yeah, just a bit of a heads up. Anyways, build time. ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the build in the new Fractal Torrent. Let's do what we usually do. Let's first check out those thermals. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the thermals are really quite good. I was quite surprised. I'm very curious to know what they'd be like with the included fans, but obviously because I didn't use them, we don't know what the story is. I'm sure there's gonna be other videos coming out with people that did use the stock fans, and maybe I will revisit it, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, thermals are quite good. There's nothing really to complain about here. I suspect thermals might be slightly different if you didn't vertically mount the GPU, but because the GPU with this vertical mount from Fractal is quite close to the motherboard, the glass just does not impact it at all. I also did some testing, as you've probably seen already, with none of the filters as well. And again, yeah, it didn't really impact it too much with having the filters in. Okay, let's quickly chat about the parts. The CPU is the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X. We put the 5950X on the Gigabyte X570S AORUS Master. To cool the 5950X, we use the NZXT Z73 Kraken with a stack of Lian AL120 fans. There's 10 fans in total. I decided to do push-pull on this setup basically to fill out the case because it looked like it was a little bit empty, and I was like, oh, it's got to also look good, so I added 3 extra fans on the front rad. You don't need to do that. It doesn't increase the thermal performance at all. If anything, it makes it slightly louder. But the power supply is the Fractal Ion Plus 2 Platinum. It's a new 860 watt power supply that they've just released at the same time as this case, so I thought I'd mention that if you're interested. For RAM, we went with 32 gigs of Antec Katana RAM at 3200 megahertz. The GPU is the Gigabyte 6900 XT Gaming OC. The only reason why I use this GPU is because it's the biggest silver looking GPU that I have right now, well, that I have available. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna use it. All the fans are the Lian AL120 Uni fans. We've got a full install guide. I'll put a link in the description if you wanna check that out to see how these all work. Probably noticed that I went tubes down with the AIO. For most cases with front mounted 360mm rads, you cannot do tubes down, but because this is a vertically mounted GPU and there's no basement on this case, it made it really easy to do it that way, and I like that I could hide the tubes behind the GPU, so it almost looks like there's no cooling in this case, and I kind of like builds that don't look like they're cooled by anything. They're cooled from the 4th dimension. All right, so what do I think about this new case from Fractal? It is different. I'll say that. It is very, very different, and it's a good type of different. Now, it follows a lot of design cues from other cases we've seen on the market, with being a more traditional, let's call it a chimney style layout. However, it's not really a chimney layout at all, is it? Because you're intaking from the front and from the bottom. The main exhaust here is basically the whole case has this hex pattern, and it's quite open, and it does push quite a bit of air out the back. One thing I think that they've done better than other cases in this chimney layout with the bottom fans is they've done the Fractal thing, and they've put it on a removable fan frame, which you can remove to put the fans on and slide them in. First issue I ran into was you need to put the bottom fans in first before you can put that front bracket in, because there's a gap where the 2 panels overlap. And yeah, there's nothing you can really do about it that way. That aside, I think what they've done is quite nice with the front panel. It's really cool. What do you reckon, Claire?
I like it.
I really like that front panel design. It looks sick. Like, it's just so unique looking. I haven't seen anything like it in such a long time. I think they completely nailed that front aesthetic. And there's just so much gap between all of the slits on the front that even with that mesh front filter, it almost makes 0 difference to cooling performance. And there's probably gonna be people that have videos that say otherwise, but with this push-pull setup, with us basically forcing all of the air ever through the front of this case, it is very, very good. For me personally, again, it's quite big. I'm sitting right next to it on my regular chair, and you can see, like, if I'm directly next to it, I'm only slightly higher than the case itself, but yeah. The other nice little additions you'll see here are like this RGB strip. I mean, love it, hate it, whatever. Don't plug it in. You can have it if you want it. It's no problem. One side effect of the design of this case as well, which I thought was quite cool, is if you're using RGB fans on the bottom, you actually get the light spill underneath the case. So you don't need to have additional RGB lighting underneath there, but I didn't have any issues with cable management or anything like that. It is a bit tight. The one issue I do have with the back of the case is, why glass panel? Why? The tint for the back panel is actually darker than the front side as well, so I guess that kind of helps, but why? Why did they do it like that? It doesn't make sense to me. We don't need glass on both sides of the case, considering you don't even look at the back side of the case half the time, so it makes zero sense to do that. The main complaint I think people are going to have is the power supply being on the top. I don't think that's a big deal breaker at all, considering for when you're building this system and putting in the power supply, this is easily the, actually I can't believe I glossed over this. This is the best part about the case. Cable management in the top is easy. There's Velcro straps to tie down absolutely everything at the top. And if you need to add anything to your power supply, you just pop the top of the case off, you can plug it in and run a cable. It's brilliant. I love it. More cases should do that. Have the power supply top mounted. I don't have a problem with it. Yes, it's very 90s, I get it. But man, for plugging stuff in, I pulled the whole top of the case off. It's brilliant. It's like getting brain surgery and cutting the top of your head off. And what do you reckon, Claire? Good case?
Yeah, I like it.
I like it. It's different. It's good. I'm probably rambling a bit, probably have to edit down quite a lot of what I said here, but I think for the sake of being different, this has nailed that different aesthetic for me and I like it. I don't think everyone else is going to like this case, but I like it. And that's it. That's the meat and potatoes. I'll put a PC part picker list down below if you want to see what all the parts are. And if you like the music you heard here, I make all the music. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peak, we seek, and it's time to engage cinematic mode. Stick around and enjoy.